Welcome to the Market Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. Power Metallics isn't just another name in the critical metals game. It's a company with teeth. Now, more than just conviction and strategy and execution, Power Metallics has been steadily tightening its grip on the future of resource development in North America. Where others are playing it safe, they move fast, they challenge the norms, and they put pressure where it matters most on performance, on accountability, and on results. And sitting with me today is the powerhouse that says it like it is, Mr. Terry Lynch, CEO of Power Metallics, a voice that's as sharp as his vision. Terry, it's so good to have you in here, and I always love a good Terry chat. So welcome.
Oh, Lyndsay, you're too kind. Always great to catch up with you as well.
So let's actually start right there. Power Metallics has built quite a reputation for being unapologetically direct, with no fluff and no smoke, just pure execution. Now, how has that mindset shaped your growth strategy, and what sort of message is that sending to both your investors and competitors?
You know what? I think at the end, a lot of messaging is based upon what you've got. So we've just been super fortunate to make an amazing discovery. Not a discovery like this hasn't been made in the last 20 years. So it's a pretty miraculous discovery. And so as a result of having this, tremendous find, we feel very confident about what we found and about how we're going about executing on it. So I think as always, it all depends on the facts. So the facts are strong, so we can be strong with the facts and let the facts lead for themselves. So that's what we've been trying to do.
So for those that haven't quite read that news yet, why don't you give us the Coles notes? What was the find?
So basically, we had a nice little nickel sulfide, fairly traditional. We had acquired it some years back and had 3.1 million tons with 1.5% nickel sulfide. Nice little starter. Grew that. Probably there's 8.5 or so right now. And looking for more nickel sulfide, we stepped out about 5 kilometers away to a similar target. We thought, drilled it, and we didn't find nickel sulfide. Instead, we found this mother of all copper precious metal zones, and just got lucky, Lyndsay. So we did it for the right reasons, but God's blessed us. Thank you, God. Better to be lucky in this life, So we got extremely lucky, and the God did bless us. And that zone right now is called the Lion Zone, and analysts estimate it has between 8 to 13 million tons of between 5 to 7% copper equivalent. Those are staggering numbers. Super high grade. And what it did is it transformed our understanding of what we had from a normal nickel sulfide to what's called an orthomagmatic nickel copper PGE project. And there's only about 20 of those in the history of the world. They're literally the world's greatest mines, the most profitable mines. So we found a whopper. So that's really sort of the backdrop of what broke what was initially Power Nickel to become Power Metallic. And, we were obviously the top performing mining stock in Canada last year.
Well, seriously, that is a mic drop right there. Congratulations on all of that. Now, when we talk about Power Metallics, we're talking about serious exposure to metals that drive the modern world, the nickel, the copper, the gold, and actually even beyond that. But with so many companies claiming to be critical, what makes Power Metallics the real deal, and how do you separate substance from the showmanship in this market?
Yeah, grade is a great divider, right? At the end of the day, grade drives profitability for mines, and that drives economic returns, which means mines get built. So if you don't have grade, then you got to have a lot of tons and a lot of certainty that the tons are there. So that means a much more longer involved, construction, de-risking process, all that stuff, and much harder to do. So these, we were lucky and blessed to be able to find such a high grade discovery. We've got built substantial tons. We could be a mine today, I have no doubt. But we think this is just the tip of the iceberg, that we have found 10% of what we ultimately might find. Who knows where this thing could go? Comparable discoveries like this have gone to be 150 million plus tons, some as much as 1 billion tons. So we're at maybe, call it, 8 to 13 now, according to the analysts. So imagine how this could be. And of course, the good news is we're fully funded. We've cashed up. We've got 40 million in the bank, and we're in the midst of a 100,000 meter program just to try and answer that question: how big can this thing be? So we're in a pretty enviable position.
What a great position to be in. Terry, I want to pivot here just a little bit. Bill 63, the Quebec mining law. So shameless plug, recently broke this bill down in a market knowledge video. Wink. Terry, with that new law, we know that Quebec is now putting tighter limits on land access and control. Are we watching leadership in sustainable mining, or is this more of a warning sign for every jurisdiction in Canada and perhaps even beyond?
Listen, I think it's imperative for all mining companies to get involved with their local communities and, get in front of this. It's all about being a good neighbor, being proactive. It's not a one-way street. And we've been very proactive. In our case, James Bay Cree are our principal First Nations partner. We picked up some additional ground in another district that another Cree, Mistagami Cree are part of, and we've chatted with them. I'm sure they'll be fine too. But most of our relationship has been with the James Bay Cree, and they've been sensational to work with. But we worked at it. We get up, we talk to them, we tell them, what our plans are, what we plan to do, how we envision the thing coming together, how we can, build a better community for them and for their constituents and create a win-win. So that's the way mining needs to be in the future. And I think the Quebec law is really about encouraging mining companies to think that way, and to, enforce them to think that way. But I think good mining companies have always thought that way and will continue to do so. So I don't see that as a impediment. I think it's a low barrier, and we were well above that anyway. So certainly not an issue for us. And I think it's just that it's the way of the world, and this is the way it should be, really.
Absolutely. There's a shift that absolutely definitely needs to happen, and to bring in a larger amount of those communities that surround each project. I mean, they know the land better than anyone, so why wouldn't we want to partner with that for sure? So that's just one aspect, but thank you so much for just sort of breaking that down a little bit for us. You've also been one of the louder voices pushing for North American control over its own critical supply. So we see it on LinkedIn often, and let's get into that. Is this about economic defense, or is it a wake-up call to governments and investors who've gotten too comfortable letting others dominate production?
Yeah, there's no shortcuts in this world. Eventually, the shortcuts will come back and kick you in the ass. So that's what's happening now. So I think the United States has fundamentally woken up to the fact that China is far ahead in the race to secure strategic minerals of all sorts. And so the one thing you will say about the Americans, when they wake up and they are a force. So they've woken up now. You can see them moving rapidly, more rapid than any of us would have thought. And I suspect it's just going to pick up steam from here. So, do we underinvest in money? Well, of course we have. It's ridiculous. So we're at this is a cyclical business. So we're in a cyclical low just coming out of it now. But this has been the cycle of the ages. It's been the worst mining cycle in history, not even close. So there's been a massive underinvestment in mining. We've had a lot of important skill sets leave the business. So even when we want to turn it on with money now, there's a lack of people. So this is going to take years to solve. But I mean, for the people that did persevere and have found major discoveries and have the teams to execute on them, it's going to be tremendous times. I believe this will be the biggest mining boom in history.
Now, do you believe actually that now that there are two administrations on both sides of the border that are very pro mining and putting the funding or whatever it is, the protocol, all the things behind the mining sector, do you think that that's going to see a difference short term or long term?
You know what? I mean, it's going to start to, you can see it's starting to move. Obviously, the TSXV is the top performing index in the world at the moment. I mean, that's bouncing off a very serious bottom, though. So it's just early days, and still have a long ways to go. There's still a lot of fundamental problems with the Canadian capital markets. Still, with the U.S. capital markets, they're not protecting investors enough. With true transparency, we're still seeing a lot of short activity and bullshit trading, spoofing and all this nonsense that I can't believe the regulators allow it. It has discouraged investors and turned them into real estate, into crypto, into other things, because if they feel the game is rigged, they don't play. Now, investing, especially in the more speculative areas, is a risk and return business, and generally it's a fear and greed business. So fear has dominated the mining space for a very long time because returns have been dismal. There's been no real, it's been super hard to have a win. But now greed is starting to, grow in people's hearts because people are seeing, gold all of a sudden go from, it's where it was to in this last year up, over 4,000, silver over $50, so all of a sudden the precious metals are beating the charge. Base metals are starting to wake up. So now people are realizing, holy cow, commodities are about to turn up in a big way. And I think these, obviously they've had a nice burst here and they've pulled back a little bit, but this is just the start. People will make the mistake, I think, that of thinking, oh, I missed it. And that would be a very critical error because what you missed was the start of the race. You haven't even missed the first 10 yards of at least a 400-meter hurdle. It's going to go and there'll be some ups and downs, but this is very, very early days. And I say to people, I said it last February when I told people to push their chips in because I did. And I said, if you can't stomach owning individual mining stocks, which are volatile and do go up and down, then own, there's a lot of great mutual funds in the space. Own those because those are professional money managers. They'll deploy it. You will get as high, nor will you have as low, and at least it'll get you in the game. Because what's going to happen is you're going to miss, and there's going to be 10 baggers routinely, and there's going to be 100 baggers, and I dare say there'll be 1,000 baggers. And these, of course, are transformative for individual portfolios. So, and they don't come around a lot. So this is we're coming off a normal cycle bottom, but it's been exacerbated by the financial markets that have been misaligned, I'd say, and misstructured. And so that's created abnormally low valuations. And now these valuations are now starting to get capital. So Power Metallic is able to raise money. We're able to execute. We're able to grow our resources in the ground. We're going to move beyond the Canadian capital markets, and that's going to transform our stocks, I think. And it's doing that not just for Power Metallics, but doing it for Almonty, for other, winners that are out there that are executing their game plan. They're going to get rewarded in a big way. You'll start to see that. And so if you're an investor, you definitely want to be part of that because this will be transformative.
Well, you touched on some really great points there. And the biggest part is we see how metal markets is so volatile. So often, as you have mentioned, they're driven by that fear in the mind and fear in the emotion and also speculation more so than fundamentals. Let's push forward just a little bit with what you were just talking about. What's the biggest truth investors are actually missing right now about this space? And actually, I'm going to lean further into that. How is Power Metallics positioning itself to capitalize where others are hesitating then?
Yeah, so let's take it one step at a time. I think, one of the biggest truths is that, even when you look at, let's look at gold, since it's the most high profile commodity in our space, and it's had the biggest run. Many of the senior golds have doubled, in value. And I think people sort of say, oh, well, I missed it, but in actual fact, they are cheaper on a net present value basis than they've ever been because, the operating margins have transformed, right? Gold prices have gone up, oil prices have come down. These margins are, ridiculous. They're printing cash. And yet it hasn't reflected. Yeah, they've doubled. They should have tripled. Okay. And they'll probably go 10 times, some of these, so it's like, and yet people think, oh, I missed it. And that would be the wrong takeaway. The same thing applies across the board to companies that have got serious resources. We've got a serious resource. When we raised our $50 million in February of last year from the top mines in mining, people like Robert Friedland, Rob McEwen, and the big mining funds, that was not a hot time. February was not hot. It was still a very choppy time. And we raised it because people looked at our what we'd already discovered in the ground relative to our peers and we're thinking, oh, these guys are trading at 20, 30 cents on the dollar and they're about to get revalued. So we want in and they got explosive upside. Well, go flash forward 6 months. We're basically trading around the same levels as what we were back when we did the financing levels. And our commodities in that 6 months have gone up across the board 30%. So our value in the ground without us doing a thing has gone up 30%. Okay. But we have done things. We've drilled already 17,000 meters where we're showing we're growing the resource. We've picked up 6 times more land adjacent to our discoveries. So it's like we've done a ton of things to create fundamental value, and we're going to drive more value in the ground from the assay in terms of finding more tons, in addition to the commodities rising. So it's a smash bag, ridiculous bargain right now. In my view, of course, I'm long and therefore recommend. So I'm not, saying anything, that I don't believe in fully myself. But that type of thing is happening in the Power Metallics, and it's happening in many other great companies in the space. And that's what investors should be looking at, is who's got the real discoveries? Are they growing it in the ground? Because that's what matters. Are you posting numbers? Are you growing your resource? Are you de-risking your project? Are you moving to commercialization? Those are the material things. Those are the ones that are really going to be the big winners. There's always speculation that, hey, you picked up some ground, they're going to throw a drill hole in. And it's sort of like going to the casino and betting on, 17 red, whatever. Maybe it hits, and it's 36-1, but most likely you missed, right? So it depends on what people's appetite is. I think it's fine to sprinkle exploration, but the best scenario is when which is what I believe Power Metallic offers, is you've got this asymmetric exploration upside, but you're buying it at already a discount price because it's been mispriced by the market. Now we're taking steps to change that. We're moving to the New York Stock Exchange. We're doing stuff like this to try and get our message out there. So we hope to reduce this gap or eliminate it over time. But we're also hoping to find a whole lot more minerals in the ground, in addition to the growing commodity price. So look for that in your investments. Look for that asymmetric upside. So you don't have a lot of downside, but you got still a lot of upside. That's the best setup for investors.
I feel like I should actually be taking some serious notes here on any of that you just said. It's so full of knowledge. Thank you for that one. I have one more question here, though. The next chapter of mining it's actually going to demand agility. It's going to demand, balancing sustainability, profitability, and technological advancements all at once. We already see it starting to happen. What's Power Metallic's edge in this environment? To unpack that further to that, how are you turning that edge into real measurable value for shareholders?
Yeah, the most important thing you can do is build a great scientific team. In an exploration stage company like Power Metallic, even though we're moving now towards development, you need to have two groups of people. You need a team that can raise money effectively so that shareholders have value created for them. And that's sort of my job. And then you need to have that money spent well in the ground, creating advantage, i.e. finding resource. So to do that, you need great scientists, and it's an ever-changing game. So probably the best move we ever made at Power Metallic was when my son sent me a video on Dr. Steve Beresford. He said, "Dad, look at this guy." My son's a CFA, so he's a sharp kid. He sends me this video and he said, "Dad, we got to get this guy." So I watched this video, and this guy's talking about orthomagnetic deposits, which is what we have. And that's his specialty. He used to be chief geo at first Quantum, and then MMG, and then IGO. So the guy's had a string of successes. Big. He's probably spent more money on polymetallic exploration than any man alive. So he literally knows this game better than anybody. So I reached out to him through LinkedIn. Eventually we connected. I sent him some assays. He said, "Well, looks pretty interesting. Let's see what else you got." So eventually we started to reel off the line zone, and he said, "Oh, you definitely got one." So I got him to come over, and then it was clear that we had to get this guy. So we made a deal. Got Steve on our board, and he's been our thought leader. And he has his cousin, or his we tease them because they both worked at Western Mining together at the same time, even though they didn't know each other. But his operating side, because you got to have the theory, and then you got to have the execution on the operating side. So Joe Campbell, he runs a company called GeoVector, and they're one of the top 2 or 3 geological consulting firms in the country. And so they bring a depth of execution. So they can, get the drill bids competitive. They can manage the drill rigs. They can manage core being shipped in. When you got 5 rigs rolling, that's a lot of core coming in. Has to be cut, has to be documented properly, has to be modeled properly. There's a lot of moving parts. So you gotta have a tight team that gets it and that understands the theory of what how you're using technology to advance your exploration. We're using that because, luckily with Dr. Beresford, he's spent so much money, he knows what technologies work in these types of situations. So as an example, we're, one of the benefits about Power Metallic is we're literally off the road in Quebec, off of Route North. You could drive right to our site, right to our rigs. There's hydro lines on the site, power there, of course, which will be a benefit for us when we commercialize. But right now, as an exploration, the hydro lines are a bit of a negative because EM, electromagnetic, investigation in that geophysical perspective, is a clear technology to use to find sulfide bodies like what we're looking for. But this was getting distracted by the hydro lines because it basically was a dummy signature. So the traditional approach was not working. So, but Steve has, because he's been in this business for 35 years, and he's dealt with these problems before. Said, you know what, we had this problem in Finland, and we came up with a solution. I can't remember what the solution was, but I'm going to talk to my Finnish guys and find out. Talks to his Finnish guys, says, yeah, you remember we used the old EM approach where they put it on the ground and they reverse the wires and blah, blah, blah. And he says, yeah, that works, right. So we ended up going to a supplier that could do that, and bingo, it worked. And so that led to us making more progress, on with the lines and whatnot. So those types of moves save you millions and save you time. So either you have guys that know that or you don't. You know what I mean? You can't fake it. Either have it or you don't. We luckily, thanks God, we have it. And we're continuing to find these innovations, because as you go deeper, you need new technologies. So we're doing that now. We've got some new cool stuff called Muon that's going to be. We'll be talking about that on November 4th when we give people the big updates. But there's some pretty. We've always been spending money on technology at Power Metallic because we're a small guy. We got to think quicker. We got to act quicker. We got to move faster than the big guys. So we don't have as much money. So we have to use technology to leverage that for us. So we've got a great team scientifically, both from the thought leadership perspective of how to conceive and find the ore body, but also on the execution side of actually doing the hard work of actually drilling, assaying, logging, structurally modeling, doing all the critical things you need to do to find it. Those are all the things that actually go into making this great discovery. And of course, we've been, we're luckily we're well funded, so we can do this. And unlike a lot of juniors couldn't, many years we could not do that. So this is a blessing for us, but all made possible because of the deposit or the discovery, right? This is a hot discovery. It's well worthy of a lot of money to be invested in it, and we're putting to work in the right way.
I love hearing all of that and the movement forward. I mean, you're definitely trailblazing for sure. Thank you again. I love our conversations. I can't wait for the next one. Keep it all coming. This is so exciting. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Lyndsay, have a great day. Cheers for now.
Again, that was Terry Lynch, CEO of Power Metallics, trading on the venture under the symbol PNPN. For more on their projects and vision, visit powermetallic.com. This has been the Market Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk with Apatow Media, and we'll see you next time.